They ruined my life, plain and simple. They ruined my 25 years old. They took my youth away.
Imagine for a moment that you're in the military. You've sworn to serve your country. However, during the lines of duty, you suffer from a horrific accident, one that will undoubtedly change your life forever. Now, instead of getting the care that you deserve, you're instead chastised for years by the very country that you swore your life on. That is until you're medically retired without as much as a survivable wage. Meet Dave, an ex-military veteran who suffered this very fate, one that has plagued him for the past 12 years. This is his story and why it's incredibly important. So you're a YouTuber, a streamer, you're a veteran, and your father. You suffer from nerve damage like myself. And like I said, you were a veteran. So let's kind of go back at the beginning of this to your military days and you getting into the military and just where all this crazy story happened.
I was a kid, man, 18 years old, right out of high school, Las Vegas. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with life, like so many of us. I had a really good college opportunity. I was good enough at sports, and I was good enough at theater to be able to muster out some sort of a ride, But I, instead of signing any letter of intent, I decided to join the military. Bam, I'm just going to take a 3-year pause. The date's important. The date that I said this and the date that I decided to leave for the military was July 9th, 2001. Little did I know my world was about to change. Life was about to change when those towers fell. And you're in basic training to become a soldier. And you're in South Carolina, which is not all that far away when you're on the East Coast. It changes your perspective, especially as an 18-year-old kid. So it was a very inauspicious start, to say the least, to my military career.
So it's 2001, you've just joined the military, you're in basic. So tell me about your first deployment and how that went down.
So we everybody freaked out in basic training about it. We actually lost about 13 people, I think, washed out or lost enough family. We had 32 people who had people affected in the company. So 32 people in the entire company who actually had to go to New York or Pennsylvania where they had family that was affected at first. So after basic training, you go to AIT, Advanced Individual Training. And I'll never forget this day because this would be the day of all the other dates so far. This would be the one that would actually define my life. This is the day I found out what duty station I was going to. And everybody was getting these incredible duty stations. They were getting Schweinfurt, Vilsa, all these wonderful things. Everybody's happy, party time, even in an uncertain time. And then finally, the one person who was being stationed in the Rock. And anybody who served knows what the Rock is. It's a terminology for a base in Germany known as bomb holder. It's a little town, and I like to refer to it as the seventh ring of hell. It's a rapid deployment unit. It's part of 1st AD, the same unit that Elvis served in. And it didn't take more than a year before we got our orders. And at the same time, I had just met this girl 2 months prior. I got her pregnant, changed everything. Next day, I found out I'm going to Iraq, so I freaked out, did the thing that I was always supposed to do, marry the girl, do the right thing. And I go to Iraq as a not even 20-year-old. I left for Iraq, I believe, May 1st, 2003.
So when you were there, when you were in Iraq, how did your first tour go? And then
boy, first tour, this would be the tour that would inevitably be the one that changed my life. So I was commo. I was 25 uniform in the military communications, but I was in a infantry unit. We're going through Camp New Jersey and Buring and all of these things. And I was with my first unit. I was with my first NCO. That's still to this day, the 3 weeks that we spent there training in Camp New Jersey is the most intense training I've ever done. We went stationed in Kuwait to go get all of our equipment, retrofitted. Our equipment wasn't ready. This was the first wave of people. We were right behind 3rd ID, who were the first people who went in and just massacred. Nobody had any preparation. We were taking our doors off the Humvees on our ride up to Iraq from Kuwait. And you go into Iraq, especially at this time, and every time you stop, you get swarmed by children trying to sell you anything. Think of it as a 20-year-old kid, not even 20 years old yet, going through all this, going through all the changes that he's already been through in the last year and a half. It's just a mind-numbing experience and something that really sets you up for what's coming.
You had things that nobody could have ever expected to happen. And that's something you could say to anyone in the military, but you really had some crazy stuff happen.
That ultimate curveball. It's funny because it's the moment that changed my life. So when everything doesn't even feel 100% real when you're in these environments, one thing will always make something feel real, and that's danger. that actual fear. So you hear gunfire a lot in Iraq. I've been through IEDs, I've been through mortar attacks, I've been through rocket attacks, all kinds of stuff. I remember my sergeant, my NCO at the time, he just looked at me, he goes, "It's not the pop, pop, pop that's scary, it's the ting, ting, ting." If you're hearing ting, 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 that means the bullets are hitting something very close to you. When I was in the middle of doing something, I was trying to set up what's known as a retrans mission. Or so you're trying to take one signal and extend it out to a further line. And I'm about 9 feet off the ground, and I hear ting, 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 and I jump off. I had a whole lot of gear on. I was carrying an antenna, and I jump off, and I felt wrong after I hit the ground. Have you ever hurt yourself so badly that you're not hurt, but you know something's fundamentally different with you?
Yes,
Yep.
when I was a kid, I stabbed myself in the leg with a stick and just scooped a big old piece of meat out of my knee.
I knew I had done something, and I my legs hurt, my knees hurt, my hips hurt, my back hurt, my neck hurt, every part of me hurt. I'd go get checked out, and like they would do the regular examinations they would do, and just like, you're okay, you're totally fine. I had a couple things that my knees were worn down already by the time I had gotten in, because I was an athlete my whole life. That's where the frustration started, because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have the vernacular. I didn't have the experience. I didn't know how to translate it. I just knew, "Wow, this hurts." And then I had done a couple other things in Iraq that I would hurt myself even more, including hilariously falling off of a diving board, a 50-foot diving board. Fell off that bitch. Still, just so incredible. But that was the moment. That moment that would not only make me realize just what I was in, but where I was in.
So let's fast forward a few years. You've had other moments, I'm assuming, that you begin to notice these things again. Did
Yeah.
you go back in and say, like, look, man, this stuff is still kind of going on and it's really funky?
That after that moment happened, I would be going to sick call, as they call it, very, very frequently, because my body was just going poorly. It like it turned out I had strained, torn, or ripped almost every ligament and tendon in my legs, my back, and in my groin. I just destroyed. I gave myself double hernias on both sides. I started going to sick call more often, trying to get things checked out, but nothing was coming up with anything. I wasn't getting any MRIs or any type of thing. Back then, at this time, malingering was a big word, and they just assumed everybody was faking. Everybody was trying to get out of PT. At 6:30 in the morning, who wants to work out in -2-degree weather in Baumholder, Germany? So everybody goes to sick call. I got a stomach ache. I got a shit. But I was going, and I was complaining about these really weird things, pain that you could not physically see, no manifestation. So I just looked like I was crazy, as I like playing life on hard mode. Ninja Gaiden to black hard mode. That's what I like. All of these things are transpiring, and my life is changing drastically. I'm a father now. I'm trying to keep my body together. Weight gain was getting really bad. Now I was like routinely in the 230s again. But when I left basic, I was 180 pounds. Push myself. I couldn't work out. I couldn't do anything. And I was started getting in trouble. I started busting weight. I had to get taped. And then I started having issues passing PT tests. Everyone just started treating me like I was a shitbag. And I'm like, no, there's something wrong. This is 2005, late 2005. I had a couple of hernia surgeries in the meantime. On the one that would change my life in 2005, they kept me in a hospital for a week. And this doctor, for whatever reason, did not like me, did not like Americans, and he thought I was full of shit. I am in dying pain. At this point, I'd been back and forth a million times. I had x-rays. We had even seen that I had a blood packet in my abdominal lining, which is an anomaly, but yet nobody was taking anything serious. So this doctor kept me there for a week and kept sticking me with like dying patients in my room. And it was a horrible week. And for a week, they find nothing. So it's time for you. There's nothing wrong with you. I go, doctor, I'm telling you, you're wrong. He goes, fine. How about I do an exploratory surgery? Thinking I'm going to be like, oh, fucking go ahead. Let's go. Cut me open now. Let's go. Because I knew something was wrong. down to the surgery. He's telling me what an idiot I am, essentially. I have the surgery. I wake up in the bed. This asshole is standing there with this fucking look on his face. They found 2 major tears in my lining. My groin was destroyed. So this guy, at some point during the surgery, you have a major nerve in your both sides of your pelvis. Your left side is a little bit stronger. It controls a little bit. It for some reason, people who have left side nerve damage pain tend to experience a little bit more extreme ends of it. And I think it's because circulatory system is all originated on the left side. So it makes sense to me. When I came out of surgery, I felt wrong. This guy sewed that nerve into my groin in both places of the tear. And because it was still technically military, I was sent there by the military and didn't go of my own. I couldn't sue. I can't sue. I can't do anything. After that surgery, I knew I just felt different. I was walking almost bow-legged because he took this integral nerve in this side and he just kind of kinked it. And we wouldn't know for 2 years. Now we fast forward to 2007 when everything would kind of happen. That would be on my second deployment.
And this is where things started really tripping you up. When you were doing basic exercise and stuff like that, your body would lock up, you said. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, it was really crazy. So in the 2 years that had passed where I had been an armor, I had done all these other things because I'm the type of person, if I can't give all my all in one area, I'm going to give more than my all in another area, make up for weaknesses in other places where I have strength. So I get traded from this is a thing that happens in the military. So I told you about the restructure, about how units were changing. In 2006, this was a massive thing happening in Europe where virtually every post was changed fundamentally. Some units disappeared completely. I got requested to join a new unit in Wiesbaden and leave the unit that I was in Dexheim.
But so you're at this point, and what kind of progressed next to where you knew like shit was getting, like it was already real?
The point of going to a new station was we knew we were getting deployed. That was part of the trade. My body was breaking down. I knew it. So I knew it was about to change. Again, I was going to be going downrange. I was going to be going back to Iraq, and I could get promoted there because PT tests and things like that weren't all that important. You just go to the board, you get promoted. So I'm like, this is my opportunity. I need to get my E5 now. If I want to reenlist, I'd been coming close to 8 years. I had almost fulfilled my entire contract. What I did not know was that I was starting to develop these hypersensitive nerves where I would have these bouts, these time periods, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes an hour, but nothing too long, where I feel like if you were putting your finger on me, it felt like you were gouging me with a nail. You try telling that to anybody, let alone people in the military. They think you're crazy. Get to Iraq. This time I'm in a chill duty station or chill area. This is in Tikrit, Iraq, Saddam Hussein's hometown, I believe. I was having a hard time carrying my weapon around. My battles, my buddies, shout out to all my friends that carried me through that deployment. People would carry my weapon for me. People were taking weight away from me because they believed me at this point.
Yeah.
My E1s to E5s, even they believed me. They saw something was wrong. I'm doing a PT test, so you're pushing yourself, you're trying to, and my body just locked up. I was in the middle of a sit-up and I stopped moving. Couldn't explain why I wasn't moving anymore. I wasn't even in pain.
It just went like lock.
Shut off. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't feel any part of me. I didn't know I was on the ground. I didn't know where I was. I was very disoriented the first time this happened. When your body just shuts off and you're a fighter pilot and you're on the sticks and you're used to just complete control. Whatever you want to do, you think it happens. You don't even have to think it happens. We just do this. Our hands move independently of it. It all seems, little do we know, all these intricate little things are happening inside these nanoseconds of electricity and information being thrown all over your body. And that wiring starts getting fucked up in parts of your body. When you start feeling that for the first time, you have no explanation. And my NCO is standing over me, he's grading me, he's like, come on. I'm like, I can't move. And then my foot And this is, I'll never forget this. It felt like somebody started lighting my foot on fire. And I felt this burn start in my foot and go all the way into my groin and up my left side. And I just started crying, bawling in the middle of this field with a whole bunch of people around me. Can't move. They can't get me up. Like, I'm dead weight at this point. Like, I cannot put any pressure on anything. I get taken to all the to the little hospital that they had there on post. They don't know what's wrong with me. They like take an X-ray or whatever. They got to send me to Kuwait.
Right. And this is your first experience with that. Your foot just starts being lit on fire.
My whole left side.
And when we say fire, if you've ever burned yourself, it's like do that and then hold it and never release.
And then add into it that you're feeling this. Like, you know how real it feels. You're burning and you look down and you look at your hand or you look at your foot and you can't see anything. It really messed. When I look down and I'm like, why can't I see something that explains why I feel this? It's so jarring and so confusing. I think that's why I was disoriented, because it was all the pain is just information being traveled throughout your body. That's all it is. Bloop, bloop, bloop. These are just more intense impulses. My body experienced so much pain that it just fried out. And that's what doctors would end up telling us what they thought would happen. So they sent me to Kuwait. I go there. They don't really find anything. They were like, we need to get you an MRI. So I was there for like a week, and they go, we're going to send you back to Germany. We're going to send you to Landstuhl. So this doctor, who turns out the on-call doctor at Landstuhl on this day, was the post commander, a full bird colonel. And he walks in, and he knows. He just knows what's wrong with me. After 3 minutes of conversation, I'm explaining it. He just knew. Takes out a needle, sticks it into my groin. Feel everything, and everything starts working. And I like almost spring from the bed, and I'm like, holy shit. But he didn't look like a guy who was very happy about what he had just seen. He looked pretty upset about it, in fact. And I noticed this, and I was just like, because I think your nerve on your left side, that big, I don't know the name of it. I'm sure somebody will know the name of it. And if I looked at my paperwork, I'd find it. It's destroyed. Your left side might be irrevocably damaged. And he started saying that immediately. And he goes, if I'm right, in about 45 minutes, you're going to go back to the way you were. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you're going to be unable to move again. I go, what are you talking about? You just fixed me. He goes, no, I didn't. I just confirmed a suspicion. So he sent me right to the pain clinician. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He knew it was chronic pain, and he had a good enough idea of what was causing it, at least in his mind at that time, to send me to the pain clinic, which would turn out to be the worst thing that they could have ever done.
And so you went to the pain clinic, and now this is where it kind of gets, if I can even say this, because I've said it so many times, it gets crazier. So what did they start you doing there, and where did it escalate to?
They get me in there. He starts coming to the conclusion very quickly that there's definitely incredible damage on my left side. So we have to, first thing that they're always going to try to do, and I always find this weird that this is the first option and not the second. Yeah, I would think the first option would be to put a temporary nerve block in to try and cease the damage, or at least cease the pain from the damage, to try and locate what's going on. Now, I've been told by pain doctors the reason why they don't do that is because they need you to be in pain. They use that as a map to find what's wrong with you, especially when we're talking about neurological damage, which is so unpredictable. It really varies from person to person. Every body type, fat, how much fat you have in your body, how much muscle, how lean it is, all of these things determine crazy amounts of factors of how much pain you're going to be in if you're having any sort of neurological damage or stress trauma at all. So he did the first thing that apparently they do, and that's burn your nerves out. A nerve ablution, I believe it's called. Take these two needles, essentially. They look like jumper cables, and they just burn out all your nerve endings, and hoping that it's like cauterizing the wound, and you're simply not going to feel anything in that area anymore. They were convinced if we can kill the nerve pain in my left groin, we could fix all of this.
What I'm assuming happened is your nerve began to grow back.
Yes.
And the act of your nerve growing, and this is true when your nerves regrow or heal to any extent, it causes pain.
So the nerve starts growing back immediately. In fact, they used the term back then, called rapid regeneration or something like that. It was growing incredibly fast. I was feeling pain the next day. I was feeling pain before I left. Like they did not. I was trying to tell him. He's like, no, you're just feeling the effects of the needles in you or whatever. I'm like, no, dude, I'm telling you, I'm feeling the exact same thing.
That next day you're in pain. What do you do from there?
I go right back. I
Yeah.
go right back, and we go right back to the drawing board. Still have not had an MRI, and at this point, I honestly had forgotten about it. Like I said, the doctor who treated me when I got there was a full bird colonel, and then he's the one who made the recommendation. Why wouldn't everybody else be as sure that they just did not do an MRI, which would have saved me years? Go on now would end up being basically a scandal that General Hertling, who was the commander of the post at the time, who would later go on to be one of the highest ranking generals in the military, they put the temporary nerve block in. That's what they decided to do. They're like, temporary nerve block, groovy, because we know this is nerve damage. So we're going to block that nerve. And this is where they start talking about putting in a spinal cord stimulator. Basically, the plan is we're going to take those pain impulses
Signals.
going through your body, the signals, and we're going to replace them with a electronic stimulation signal where you'll feel that instead. To do that, they got to know if a nerve block will work. So we do the temporary nerve block. And what's the most important word in that sentence that I just used?
Temporary.
Temporary. So I go back to my unit in Germany. So I go and I'm just a hard charging hoo worker. You tell me to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm supposed to be doing nothing at this time. Within 2 days, I'm moving furniture. And then I come to work this one morning and they call me into the office and they say, hey, you're going back to Iraq in 2 weeks. I'm like, what? No, I'm not. He goes, yeah, you are. Like, my doctor needs to sign off on the paper, and he puts this paper on the thing, and it's got a completely different signature. Major Essen, a name that I'll never forget. She was the medical officer who was in control of everything medical on the post in Wiesbaden at the time, for at least for my unit. I get redeployed back to Iraq, go meet up with my unit in May of 2018. Where you tell me to go, I'm going to go. I told them I wasn't able to. They said, you're getting on the plane. I said, Roger, my birthday's coming up. My 25th birthday, I celebrate that there. Everything, I'm okay. I'm taking one more run at trying to get my weight down. I had ballooned up really bad. I knew that everything was about to come to a crashing halt. I didn't feel like I was in my body anymore. I didn't know anything. I didn't like touches felt different. Every form of stimulation. I have no sense of smell. I was born without it. So I rely on my other senses so much. And this was fucking with everything. This was messing with every aspect of my body. And I started feeling some pains that I didn't really think about at the time. I shouldn't have been feeling them. But again, what was that word? Temporary. 3 months had passed, and we were in August now, and I was in DFAC with my first sergeant and my lieutenant, one with my SIGO, and I'm carrying my tray, and we're walking to the DFAC, and I just stop walking. They just keep moving. They just keep walking forward, and I stop walking. You know, it's like when one of those tricks in a Roadrunner cartoon where you just simply move and everybody else just keeps moving. That's what I did essentially. And they turn around and they see this look on my face, and then the tray falls from my hands. I couldn't hold anything. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't grab. I had lost full control of my body, even worse than before, and I was just stuck and I felt helpless. So they take me once again, same process all over again. This time even longer. For the next almost 3 months, they are getting me back out of Iraq once again, back to Germany. This time I get back and they don't mess around. They're like, get the stimulator in him now. $50,000 career. Boston Scientific is the company that I got my spinal cord stimulator from. So in October, about a week before Halloween, so around October 20th, they put this spinal cord stimulator in me, October 20th, 2008. When I turned on this machine, I felt electronic stimulation go through my entire body. And I had just been through the surgery to get it, which, by the way, is probably the most unique surgery you will ever have. If you ever go through this, or if anybody in the chat has ever experienced this, you have to be awake for it. So they burrow a tunnel into your spinal column to attach a wire to fuse it. They like solder a wire into your spinal column, and then boom, it runs right out into right above my right butt cheek. I have a box that the wire connects to, and that's the spinal cord stimulator, which has to be recharged every so often. And I use a external battery to put on top of my area where I have the stimulator, and it charges it. I have to hold it there for sometimes 2, 3 hours at a time and not move and try to charge it. So life became a lot more strenuous that way, just a lot more upkeep. Thing the stimulator did was allow me to walk. It's like it reset everything. My leg just remembered what it was supposed to do again. After that point, they're getting rid of me. They're like, okay, you're almost out of your contract anyway. We knew we made some mistakes. So the mistake was this: when they sent me back and I got medically evacuated back to Germany, I was despondent. This is before they even put the stimulator in me. I was just downtrodden, man. I was messed up. And I was in launch school. And this is a really important part of the story. This lady walks in and she starts talking to me. This lady comes in and she was really nice. She looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place her. I was on morphine at the time.
Mhm.
And she's asking what was wrong. I'm like, look, I don't want to be rude. I just don't really want to talk. She goes, that's fine. You mind if I just sit? I got some stuff that I want to give you. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I start talking to her a little bit. Next thing I know, I just told her everything, like every detail. I felt like I was snitching. Like I couldn't believe how much I was saying. Person, places, names, dates, units, everything. I was just, and towards the end of the conversation, I go, man, you look so familiar. Do I know you? She goes, no, but you know my husband. I go, oh, okay. So I work with him. She goes, yeah. I go, oh, he must be ranked then. She goes, and that's when I realized who she was and why I knew her, but didn't know her. It was General Hertling's wife. At this point, he was like the general of First AD. He was it. The next day, my entire command was in my room, kissing my ass. Major Essen, the person who sent me back to Iraq, kissing my ass. Found out she lost her career. Hertling dodged a bullet because he ended up leaving and taking a Pentagon position about not even a year after. I mean, everybody's like kind of talking about me at this point, and everyone knew they screwed up. I'm like the only person who was medically evacuated in the same deployment twice.
Yeah.
Because they just did not take care of me. So their way of trying to take care of me was my contract was about to be up. To out process, to leave the Army, you got to go through a process. You have to go get checked out, and the Army wants to try to put you back as close to the condition you were in when you came in. They want to release you back into the world as close to that as possible, and anything that they can't, you document and you get paid for through the VA. Well, they decided they weren't going to do that to me. They fucked me over. And with that type of case back then, I probably could have made some sort of stink about it and got some representation, and who knows, because they ruined my life. They ruined my life, plain and simple. They ruined my 25 years old. They took my youth away. They took my ability to walk. They took my ability. Back then, there's no representation. It didn't matter. All I knew was they were letting me stay at home, and I would have to go to appointments to do med board. I was being medically boarded from the Army. And through that process, which is a long, arduous process that took almost a year and a half, of which they extended me and paid me to sit at home, I would get medically retired on February 10th, 2010 at a rate of 50%. So basically, after 9 years in the Army, I got the same retirement plan that you would get if you just did 20. So you do 20 years in the military, you get 50% of your base pay for the rest of your life. So you get half of what you would make and for me, 50% of that was roughly $1,100. So I'd be getting $1,100 for the rest of my life. I'm like, all right, baller. I get medically evacuated, or medically retired rather, and I stay in Germany and took a whole nother. Now I'm out of the military. Now I've lost that purpose, and that's where life changed even more.
So you get discharged from the Army, you're in this whole new world, and so recently you got full VA health benefits.
I did.
A decade and two later.
Decade and losing a house through VA, being homeless for 3 months while being on morphine and not being able to move right. I went through hell for years, having to live in a basement and then an attic.
As someone that's gone through so much of this type of stuff, and with the VA and with veterans and stuff like that, what could be done, do you think, to actually better that system?
You know what's funny? It's okay. So back when I got hurt, the VA was at the all-time worst it's ever been in the history of the world. The VA was overloaded from Vietnam. Tens of thousands of soldiers dying in the VA queues, waiting to get some sort of help, some sort of assistance. So Obama in 2012 wrote this legislation that completely would revamp the VA. And there was an accompanying bill that was for funding it. Most projects have its own individual bill to fund the bill. So you'll have your bill, and then you have to have another bill passed for the fundage of that bill. Politics are the stupidest thing in the world. The bill was never signed. But the VA started going through restructuring anyway. So it started bankrupting the system. So from 2012 to about 2016, in the rich states that had money to fund the VA properly, everything started to work again because proper fundage with this new system, which is beautifully written by Obama. It's a really well written piece of legislation. Where the states that can do it, they were starting excelling, Connecticut being one of them. Connecticut would turn into the number 2 VA in the world or in the country rather, by 2016, 2017. Trump gets elected in 2016. Of his first handful of bills that he signs, one of them is a full fundage bill of the original legislation under the Obama administration. People started getting ridiculous money. Like the VA in every state started processing people through at an abnormal rate. Now there are laws in the country where once you are signed in to the VA, you have to be seen by a doctor there within 2 weeks.
That's great.
It is national law now. That's not just by the states. That is la-di-da-di everybody. I had no money when I came back. I started fighting for the VA then. I was only making that $1,100 that I told you about earlier, which is not enough to live off of, even with somebody else making a little bit of money as well. Everything fixed. And I knew my paperwork was wrong. I knew there was no way that was all I should be getting. I was in so much more anguish, and all these things were wrong with me. It just was not right. So I start going through the process in Connecticut, and for the last 3 years, appointments, poking, prodding, reevaluating everything, seeing if just having to relive the whole fucking experience, man. Having to go through all the questions that you've had to answer.
That's the worst.
Over and over. They give you that same look, like, what are you talking about? I did, as of last week, I finally have gotten 100% through the VA. I don't even get paid from the Army anymore. So my medical retirement, I was originally being paid from the Army. I wasn't getting anything from the VA. It took 3 years for the VA to do my initial rating.
Wow.
That was back in 2010 when it was still broken, like I said.
Yeah.
So 2012, they start redoing things. And then about 6 months after that, my paperwork goes through, and my percentage wasn't even enough to alter anything.
One thing I did want to talk to you about, because you're very fond of it, as am I, is this beautiful little plant. It's green and has about 5 leaves. It's not poison ivy. It's called marijuana.
Don't use the demon name. Don't use the name that the government made up in 1947 to demonize the product through a little movie called Reefer Madness. Did you know that before 1947, marijuana, cannabis use was legal in the United States?
I did know that.
Did you know that? Would you like to know why, Ryan?
Let's hit it.
Because it's the most amazing thing that's ever happened in my life.
And this is what I wanted to talk to you about, because pain management, you go to these pain management clinics, which I've actually never gone to, because I was just like, let's skip the BS, get me on weed.
Smart.
You've tried a bunch of the drugs. Like, you've tried them all. I'm sure they've given you the GABA, they've given you the Lyrica, they've given you
Neurontin, gabapentin,
all the different names for the same drug, basically, that treat a myriad of diseases, but really doesn't treat any of them.
They don't treat anything. They make you fatter, they make you stupider, they change your body chemistry. They do nothing.
And some of them cause what I have, which is neuropathy, which is wonderful to get prescribed a drug that this treats it as well as gives you more. Right. So it's a wonderful thing. So,
because what these drugs do is they flood all of your pain receptors. We have these little packets. The receptors are these little packets of empty space that can get flooded with impulses. So they're like, well, this medicine is going to fill that shit up, and you're not going to be able. No, it doesn't work.
But so you're into marijuana, I'm into the Mary J. Wouldn't you agree? Shouldn't that be almost the first go-to for pain medication for chronic pain issues.
Not a question. No
Because
question.
it just worked. It just hit.
When I got hurt in 2008 and everything, and they started putting me on drugs, it was 3 different types of morphine. So I had 3 in pill form, which I didn't even know morphine came in. So I was on 3 different forms of that, Percocet and Vicodin all at the same time. 5 active opioid or worse prescriptions at the same time. Wow.
Well, this is the process too. When you go to the pain clinic and then like you try something, it doesn't work, they up the dosage, which is why they like GABA, because they can do it infinitely without killing you. And then they're like, okay, this doesn't work. So then they start piling on more medications in addition to that, because their mentality is more is better. And that's not necessarily the case for any of it. Nope. And that's why marijuana, I think, is so great. And that's why I'm so thankful that we live in this time now where there's like this revitalization of the use of cannabis, because it's really changed millions of people's lives with all types of crazy pain and beyond that. Absolutely. Depression, anxiety, all sorts of stuff.
Opioids are the devil, man. They're the worst. So I told you I was about 260 when I got hurt, when I got out. After 3 years of being on this morphine, I don't remember this time period. I apparently went to school to be a friggin' history teacher during this time, and I don't remember it. I barely remember this. I was taking college classes. Opioids, they take everything from you, man. And I woke up 3 years later, 525 pounds. I was in shambles. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on. I was still dealing with the nerve damage stuff. So I stopped everything. I went cold turkey. I detoxed for about a week. Worst week of my life. I stopped taking all the prescription pills. I took myself off it completely. Start getting into yoga. I actually started doing DDP yoga before it was even known as DDP yoga.
That sounds good.
It was called YRZ Yoga back in the day. It was his original company, and it was incredible. But I couldn't do any of the movements that go to the ground. One of the biggest problems with me is I have body parts that will just disappear. Like my arm's fine, and then I'll drop something because I can't feel anything in my left arm anymore. So I knocked myself out on the ground a couple of times trying to do yoga moves because my arm just goes out, boop, boop, trying to figure out things to do with my life, and I start finding creativity. I've always been kind of an entertainer. I wanted to act. I wanted to do voices and all kinds of stuff my whole life. It was just kind of who I was and the things that I did. And I got a few cool little voices in my repertoire that I've been able to do over the years.
You do.
And stuff like that. So not to prompt a setup or anything. Well, I'm just kidding.
We could sing the whole damn song. I love that song.
But I'm striving to try and find anything to like give me purpose. That's how I got into podcasting. I wrote a book, all these things, but I'm doing it naturally. And I was very pretentious about it. I'm like, well, aren't you guys, look at all you and all your vices drinking your pain away. No. I got my breathing exercises, but mentally I was going to pieces. I was pulling away from everybody in my life. So I essentially was trying to kill myself passively with eating. I was eating 2 loaves of bread a day at one point. It was just like I was trying not to be here anymore.
The biggest thing that I really admire about you is that through all of that, you're still one of the most motivational people I've ever met. What keeps you honestly, what keeps you motivated and trying to be innovative with like your creation and stuff like that? Is that what keeps you going? Is that the idea of that? Or
2 things. One, the thing that saved my life was my daughter. My daughter at 8 years old, this was in 2013-ish, somewhere around there but I remember this moment, may not remember the exact day, but I was about 500 pounds, disgusting. Wasn't really showering much, taking care of myself. I had hair down to my ass, beard down to here. It was pretty bad. My kid was 8 years old at the time. She walked in and she stopped and looked at me, and she was standing there for a few minutes, and I saw a look on her face I'd never seen before. And I realized I just watched my daughter understand what disgust and disappointment is, because she's looking at me with disgust in her eyes. And it changed me immediately, because I realized up to that point I was being really selfish, even if I wasn't realizing it or doing it intentionally. When you ignore yourself and you let things just go because you've lost hope, you lose everything. Yeah. Despair takes from you. It's the one emotion that's completely useless. There's nothing positive about despair other than making you aware that and sometimes you can't even become aware that you're in despair. It takes everything from you. So this little girl looked at me Yeah, and at that moment, I was just like, "No, I'm gonna live for her," and it just changed it. And from there, it was I started going back into things that I loved. Tommy and I created Shop from Point. We start doing podcasting. I meet my buddies from Boston, the Soul Crushing Radio guys, and my kid, is growing up. I'm losing weight. I'm seeing her become more proud of me. I'm seeing her change. So it's I find that living for others, and I try to do this in my community a lot. Anybody who's got a project, I want a piece of, not doing it. I want to promote you. I want to try and build you around. None of us do this alone. Anyone who grows, anyone who makes
Mhm.
content, we all have somebody, whether we're bouncing ideas off of each other, or it's the people in the chat that's keeping you motivated or keeping you talking, or people leaving comments that are either helping you get better or make you question what the hell you're even doing in the first place. Whatever the case is, people are integral to this process, and building community is so important. So that became one of my biggest focuses, and it allows me every day, like, if I go check on what my mush puffs are doing and what projects they got going on, it gives me something to be invested in. And I've been lucky, I've had brushes with some nice little moments of YouTube history with Catch 33. And so I've been really fortunate. If I can give anybody even slightly a little bit of that taste, because this is exciting, man. We're creating movies and TV show quality level shit from the comfort of our own home. And now we're living in a time where all of Hollywood is having to catch up to us.
Mhm.
And all the knowledge that we've perfected over the past decade to 15 years, we're watching Jimmy Kimmel at night, can't get it right. We're watching all those guys fuck it up on a nightly basis.
Let's
No
be real.
microphones, nothing.
When did Jimmy Kimmel ever get it? Let's be
Good
real.
point. Good point. That's
When did
fair.
Jimmy ever
That's
get
fair.
it? You need to find that level of purpose. And that's why I've been thankful with this whole situation with myself has reinvigorated me to make videos at all. If someone watching is going through any of this stuff, is going through that phase where we're both at, where we have no idea what's going on, what would be your one piece of advice to them?
Don't stop asking questions. Believe in who you are, believe in what's going on with you. Nobody is going to know your body ever.
Mhm.
No one's going to know exactly what's going on inside of you. No one's going to know how you're feeling. No one's going to know your motivations. No one can know anything about anything that's happening inside of you, no matter how much they like to think that they can. Trust yourself. And if one doctor is not giving you the answers, go to this guy right here is the prime example of what you do when you don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I I was heartbroken. So, and I never expressed this to you, Ryan, ever. It broke my heart watching you have to go through what I went through. People telling you that they didn't know. And I told him to stop a couple of times. I was like, at some point, you just kind of have to accept where they tell you and just go from what you know. If they're not giving you a diagnosis for a neurological disorder, they really don't know.
yeah,
That's the thing. So you trust yourself, and both of these things can be true because as long as you don't give up on yourself, as long as you don't give up on your pursuit of trying to better yourself. Because if they can't
yeah.
fix you, you can do things to fix yourself, or at
That's
least get yourself in the right way.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your story because it blows my mind every single time. I could watch it like a movie every day and it still wouldn't get old because there's just so much meat in there.
I appreciate it. I'm sorry if I was so talky, man. That was, believe it or not, that was kind of the abridged version.
I know, I could tell. I could tell you're trying. But anyway,
I'm so sorry, man. I loved it. I really had a good time. Thank you for having me on, dude. Fantastic job. Thank you.